A long time ago, on a comics page far, far away.
Welcome to this month's episode of Panel Up, your monthly pop culture panel. I'm John Campbell. With me as always,
Mike Ergoni, me.
Yeah. We don't do this very often, and I do a lot of other things, so...
Sometimes we forget the patter.
Yep, sometimes we do. Hey, everybody. Happy February, everyone.
And a convivial February to you as well.
Indeed, yeah. I love the, we have Valentine's Day, but I love the people who are, like, the people who go all in on decorating their houses for every holiday. I love that I'm starting to see, like, the half-hearted St. Patrick's Day decorations.
Look, I just follow whatever the grocery store candy is, and all I know is they're already putting out Reese's eggs, so I'm on to Easter.
Yep. It's Easter, baby. The second Valentine's is over, it's Easter.
Whatever shape the peanut butter and chocolate is in during that vector of the year, that is where my brain is at.
What is it? A heart, a bunny, a tree? That's the only time. That's the only way I know what day it is.
I think they still haven't quite cracked the summer shape, but we'll get there.
Flags or something. I don't know.
Like something that's vaguely oval shaped, so they don't have to go too far outside of their comfort zone.
Right. Yeah, you're just like, hey, can we kind of massage that egg into being something summery?
It's a firework explosion. Sure.
Yeah, sure. Anyway. It being 2025 as it is, and due to strikes and stuff last year, we're being, just bombarded by Marvel content this year.
I mean, look, I could complain if it were bad.
Yep. Nope. No issues here. But the thing about it is, I think that's so funny is the strike happened right after they're like, hey, we're going to slow it down. We're going to make less. What's that? Oh, we have to put out like 6 things next year because stuff got delayed. Yeah.
Crap. No, we swear we're slowing down.
We swung really? Because we have 2 Marvel movies this summer, plus they had to sneak in this Captain America movie that I already had the Happy Meal toys for because they came out last summer. Because I guess you can't stop that train once it started.
No. Once the plastic molds are built and the sweatshop workers are sewing those little plushies together, we can't stop them.
Because if you recall, we got the Red Hulk thing spoiled by the first reveal of Red Hulk was as a Happy Meal plush.
Yeah. Look, well, I don't know what order you want to do this in because we're talking Brave New World and we're talking Spider-Man, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man today.
Let's get a little Spider-Man up front because that's sort of our appetizer, if you will, before the main course of Captain America.
I mean, I don't know because I'm actually going into this conversation. I'm a little torn about how much time to devote to each because honestly, I'm more excited about stuff that happened in your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Captain America Brave New World, I think is a fine movie. I think there's stuff to dig into, but exactly how much time to devote to either, I don't think we should necessarily give short shrift to either project.
No, I mean we'll kick it off with the TV over on the
fair enough
animated stuff. Because we've got it's interesting and then we're just a couple weeks out from a Daredevil showing up. So
I know. I mean, geez, honestly, we had a Daredevil show up, just a little an appetizer of Daredevil in our Spider-Man.
We sure did. Big note, not enough. Always is my note, though. I say that about everything, though. I said that about the Eternals.
We have now had 3 Marvel shows where Daredevil shows up in an episode and makes us go, up, come back.
Yeah, no, they've really, and especially to me, who's, I don't know how much people can see my camera in here. There's a big painting of him back there and stuff like that. That my number 1 Marvel character is the Man Without Fear. So, and now we've seen him, thanks to all of this, though, in about every permutation of the costume we can get. We've seen red,
yellow, we've got red.
Yeah. This has black and red in this, which is always cool.
I think the only one we haven't seen, at least in the modern iterations of Daredevil, is pure black with the red eyes from what was it when he
Shadowlands.
Shadowlands, yeah.
Yeah, and we haven't, of course, seen King of the Hand Daredevil with the beard and stuff like that.
True, true, true,
But,
true.
give Charlie Cox time, man. But yeah, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, a show we've been hearing about for years, right? I don't know, when was this first announced? At least a couple years ago.
To the point where when this show was first announced, it was a different show.
Yeah, I don't know where exactly that changed or how far they got on, because we initially heard that the show was initially announced as Spider-Man Freshman Year was what we first heard it called. And I think the idea was, or at least the assumption was, that it was going to be the origin story of the Tom Holland MCU Spider-Man.
That was everyone's assumption, and I don't know if that was necessarily confirmed everywhere, but I believe when it was first announced, that was sort of the pitch, was this is Spider-Man Year 1 for MCU Spider-Man.
Gargoni, that was 2021 they announced that.
Excuse me as I fade away and crumble to dust.
Yeah, November of 2021, because then it was 2023 that they announced the retitling. Apparently there was some, I don't think they got very far down the freshman year thing, because they said, I'm looking at the Wikipedia here. The showrunner, Jeff Trammell, talked about that basically they got, as they started developing that, they realized that was going to really restrict them. And they're right. Is like, okay, we can't introduce anything. We're really locked into about a year only of time, right, before we get to him becoming an Avenger and stuff like that. So
Right.
I think they saw that they needed to move that out of canon. And I think that is for this show's best, especially the idea of this going forward as a multi-season story.
Well, and it also gives them a certain amount of flexibility to play with assumed storytelling, right? The biggest strength of any sort of alternate reality story is that the audience has an assumption of what is supposed to, quote unquote, happen. And so your ability to play with those moments is a strength of this sort of story you can tell. And this first season, I think, leans on that in some big ways.
Well, I mean, the end of and people have, if you've seen online, I've seen people do the side-by-sides of, like, the end of the first episode is shot for shot the introduction of Peter in Civil War. I mean, like, they literally match all the angles, all the movements, the song choice, except for then it's Norman Osborn instead of Tony Stark, which was so fun to be like, there you go, okay?
Spoiler alert for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, discussing this show in any sort of depth.
Norman Osborn, and I'm terrible. No,
yeah, I know, but like,
yeah.
Spoiler alert, we're going to spoil the crap out of the show a little bit.
And already preemptive spoiler alert for Captain America, Brave New World when we get to that, too.
Right. But the big spoiler in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, I would probably say, is Norman Osborn being Peter's mentor / father figure throughout the first season is a rather large twist on the Spider-Man mythos. Like, we've seen it dabbled with here and there.
Yeah.
And there's always an aspect of that relationship, even going back to the Tobey Maguire movie.
I was going to say, there's a lot of the DNA is in that. I'm something of a scientist myself, right? This whole idea that, like, Norman actually likes Peter more than his own son in that movie and stuff like that, right? Like,
and honestly, we even see a little bit of that in the most recent Spider-Man video game. There's a chunk of that with the Peter-Harry relationship in that game also reflected on Norman.
But I think this is a really interesting play and really works if you're doing a twist specifically on MCU Spider-Man, because so much of Tom Holland's Spider-Man has been defined, each of those movies has kind of been defined by who his mentor in each film is, right? Whether it's Tony Stark or Nick Fury / Mysterio, of course, and then Doctor Strange in the third movie, / the other Spider-Mans. Right. He's had a lot of mentors. So the idea of the mentor that we know, the second Norman Osborn is there to recruit him, Norman Osborn will betray him in some capacity. This is Norman Osborn, folks.
Right. We're playing on that expectation. Again, with the alternate reality story, you're like, well, I know how this story's supposed to go. Norman Osborn becomes the Green Goblin. So there's this inevitability that comes with Norman being front and center as Spider-Man's kind of Uncle Ben, though again, this also plays a little bit with like, well, what happened to Uncle Ben with this Spider-Man? Because we really don't know for Tom Holland either.
Well, Tom Holland, as far as we know, never had an Uncle Ben that they've ever, other than the initials on the briefcase or on the suitcase. Yeah, that's the only indicate. But those movies have, for all intents and purposes, certainly at least downplayed the level of importance of Uncle Ben in his life. They made May their Uncle Ben. I mean, that was the whole. He gets with Power Grid's mother. She's the one he loses. That defines a lot of his hero's journey. And then here, the idea of Uncle Ben is already gone before he gets the powers. It has nothing to do with the Spider-Man, specifically the Spider-Man story, other than just being part of Peter Parker's story.
Right.
And in this case, it's, I mean, of course, the moment I love is making him the twisted Uncle Ben with the rewording of the iconic line and the darker, more villainous version of it.
In the last year, we have had 2 reworkings of that iconic line, one of which is far dumber than the other one, lest we forget Madam Web.
God. You know what? I did forget, because in my head, I was going, no, May just said it normally in that movie. Oh, no. God damn it. Right. Yeah. I forgot.
With great responsibility comes great power, the thing that makes no sense.
Oh, that movie's so bad. It's so bad. About, like, what are you even doing? That's the thing about that movie, is you're just like, why? And why?
But Norman Osborn's turn here of with great power comes great respect, and all of it boiling down to Norman's perceived reality of like how people respect him. And we see more and more of that wall crumbling as the season goes on, and his like obsession with proving Otto Octavius wrong and getting one over on him.
I mean, that's the thing, is I really do feel like I love all the Spider-Man stuff, but this Norman Osborn is the spine of this show, right?
Right. Obviously, there's the whole race swapping thing with the Osborns, though I honestly think that is a way of just making his hair make sense for the first time.
People have pointed this out. It's true. You're like, you see that on a black character, you're like, oh, that doesn't read as strange at all. All of a sudden, one of the weirdest haircuts in comics, you're like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that tracks.
What's interesting is they don't really, as usual, it's not like a major part of the plot in any way. It's just like, and within, 10 seconds, I was just like, okay, that's Norman Osborn, and that's Harry.
Yeah. Right. The Harry in this show, I don't know. Harry strikes me as there's a couple of characters in this show that like they've made some changes to that made me scratch my head a little bit. The Harry being like a influencer, bon vivant, like not even going to school with the rest of them, like feels a little odd to me.
It does feel like the modern take, though, right? If he's like the guy famous for just being famous, he's a rich kid, and therefore people are just interested in his life. Feels less like a take on Harry and more just like a take on what a 2025 rich kid is.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's fair.
And I'm curious to see
disconnecting him from the school life feels odd to me.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because in the comics, he, of course, doesn't meet Harry till college.
True.
Oh,
and there's a couple of people that he meets earlier than he maybe should, or at all in this show.
Well, I'll tell you right now, a certain friend of the show was like, Peter Parker never went to high school with Nico Monroe. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, sure. Well, we'll be recording an episode of something else with him later today. But
I didn't even the listeners know who I'm talking about at this point. But it was like,
but yeah, I mean, between Nico and Tombstone, there's a couple of characters here. It's like, okay, maybe they didn't go to high school together, but I think they're making it work in this story.
I mean, they it's a thing where you can see them being like, okay, Peter needs a high school friend. We're doing something different with Harry, who's another teen character. Maybe we want to give him a female character, Nico. And then through Nico, you can get, as the very, very end of the season sort of indicates, her journey into her powers and stuff like that.
Well, I think we can extrapolate some stuff from this Nico. This is a Nico Minoru who's obviously her parents have been removed somehow. Whether or not they're supervillains, like her Runaways origin, we
Right.
don't know. But
There's nothing that expressly leans into that, but there's also nothing to indicate that could, in some capacity, be the case.
right. So she has been moved to the opposite side of the country and is living in foster care. So, like, we don't actually know a lot of what her origin story is at this point. We know there's still something mystical going on with her based on the end of this show, and they've done enough close-up shots on that amulet to make me think I have an idea of what's going on.
And her at the end, surrounded by the candles, and kind of being like, "Oh, you doing like witchcraft stuff?"
Yeah, I mean, look, Nico's always a witchy character.
Yeah.
One of my favorite incarnations of her is in the Midnight Suns video game, where she has like more leaned into the witchcraft side of things, so she doesn't just have the single-use spells like she does in the comics. And
Right.
honestly, her from A-Force was also good when she had that awesome magic arm.
Yeah. She's a character. I mean, that's sort of a thing too about you talking about this. She's a character who has gone through many iterations on the comics. So the idea too of like, well, Nico wasn't here. It's like, well, Nico has been, reconceived a few times. Not wholly rebooted, but evolved. And
Sure.
and different writers have done different stuff with her. So I didn't hit on that at all, especially because, like we're talking about, so much of this is just like, this is a world. The thing that I think is very interesting, we've seen a lot, the multiverse, obviously we're in the middle of the multiverse saga, right? Which I guess this is ostensibly kind of part of. To a certain extent, I don't know how much it's really going to matter, but it's made in the multiverse era of Marvel.
Sure.
The thing I like about this is unlike a lot of stuff we've seen, a universe that's running fairly parallel to the MCU. Like, it's mostly the same with some minor changes.
I mean, we've seen, and that's another thing they play with in terms of expectations in this show, is we have certain events that line up, and when they pop up, you go, oh, okay. So the invasion of New York happened. Mm-hmm. The Sokovia Accords happened, so that makes us assume that Age of Ultron also happened.
Yeah, I mean, this Peter is coming into the universe around the same time that MCU Peter came in, right?
Right. But there are some differences, obviously. We have Doctor Strange kicking around and doing Sorcerer Supreme stuff maybe a little earlier than he might otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the one of the coolest things is, of course, the idea that the season loops back around and Peter is his own origin. Like,
yeah, I mean, John, you know me and time travel stuff.
God damn it, Gergani, you and the time stuff.
I don't know how I feel about Spider-Man being a bootstrap paradox. That's for those who don't know. Mm-hmm. In conceptual time travel circles, event that fulfills its own existence is called a bootstrap paradox. It's somebody pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps in a way that could only happen because they do it.
Right.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, another way of putting it.
Yeah. Is Kyle Reese considered that in Terminator?
Yeah, 100%. Kyle Reese's existence is a bootstrap paradox because, like, his father wouldn't exist without, or like his mission.
John Connor, the John Connor sends Kyle Reese back in time, but Kyle Reese is John Connor's father. So if John Connor doesn't send Kyle Reese back, John Connor's never born.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And this, by this very this is even more like insular than that, because if not for a spider injected with Peter Parker's blood biting Peter Parker never gets spider powers to get injected into that spider. It's just a self-contained time loop.
Comic booky.
It's very comic booky. The venom of it all is also tied into it. Obviously, like you open up a portal into some unknown region of the galaxy, and oops, there's venom. Yeah,
what venom? What symbiote is that? Venom symbiote, or isn't that one of the other?
It's just generic, big, goopy symbiote monster.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if anybody ever says. Yeah, they just call it the symbiotic alien.
Yeah.
Yeah,
obviously,
but isn't that one of them? Isn't the furry kind of one of them? One of them? I don't know. There's a million. I write in if you know, but because I struggle to keep all the symbiotes in my head. They all have names.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this one's name is Cry Havoc. Sure, let's.
Yeah, I mean they all have names like that, right? Screech and Yeah. Metal burn.
But yeah, I just having Peter himself be his own origin story. I don't know how I feel about it.
I dig it. It's very Doctor Who.
It's very Doctor Who. That's true.
Yeah, I like that. I was like, I'm sorry, did I have to look here? Did Stephen Moffat write this?
I mean, and I really, when they introduced the whole like interdimensional portal thing, I started to get an inkling about what was going to happen, especially when Doctor Strange showed up. But the fact that Norman calls it Project Monolith, I mean, obviously it's probably more than likely a 2001: A Space Odyssey reference, but
yeah, which was also a Marvel comic, lest we forget.
Right. But the first neuron that lit up in my brain was, oh, they're using something called a monolith to travel to a distant point in space. This is an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reference. Now, whether or not that's actually true, I don't know. But that was a huge plot point in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where there's monoliths that could, like, transport people across space.
Yeah. I mean, sure, why not? We're in the multiverse.
Yeah, and more Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. rep. That's all I need.
Okay. You have fun, Gorgoni.
Hey, I love that show. And if anything, I think that show has, like, especially as we've gotten into more multiverse stuff, like, I think that show stands as a pillar of quality in the early days of Marvel trying to branch out.
All right. Kevin Feige would disagree, but that's okay. I think it seems like it's
no Inhumans.
Oh, well, Jesus. No. One of the worst things with the Marvel banner on it. Jesus.
We saw that crap in IMAX, John.
We sure did. For the fans. For the
fans, yeah.
Did you ever watch? I never watched anything past that, though.
I watched a couple of episodes and was like, no.
No, that was enough for me. The IMAX pilot was enough for me. I never saw it again.
Let's take a character whose whole cool thing is her prehensile hair and shave it off. Sounds good.
Well, I just love the idea about, like, we know that that's like a turn, but most people aren't going to know that. So what is because it's not even a subversion of you all know this, so we're going the other way. No, they don't. People don't know that. People tuning in don't know that character. Yeah. So weird. Weird.
Let's make a character whose whole thing is he's really smart and conk him on the head, so he's a dum-dum.
Oh, my God. Man, I just got to say, yeah, that's one of the most misguided things that's been made in modern Marvel. Of course, I know, and as once again, Kevin Feige were like, we didn't make it!
And yet they bring back Anson Mount as Blackagar Boltagon.
Well, great choice. And he was cool for the little bit that he's in Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, they're very clearly doing a lot, and I think, like I said, for especially the future of this show, because you've seen the concept art going into the second season of Gwen Stacy.
No, but I mean that was a safe assumption for me. Was just like, well, okay, there's some key like background characters here that haven't been introduced yet. Obviously, Gwen Stacy, MJ, like.
Gwen Stacy is not only showing up as Gwen Stacy, but as a Spider character as well. So, I don't know in what capacity that will be, but they released the character designs of her in Gwen Stacy and in Spider-Gwen costuming for the second season. Because this has already been picked up for 2 more seasons, so we're going to get at least 3 seasons of this thing.
Well, that is something cool about these animated projects that I appreciate is once you put the time and resources into developing the technology to like create these animated worlds and you have the frameworks to create these stories, like you basically have to commit to a certain amount. That's what happened with What If as well.
Yeah. Well, and the lead time that's needed on these things is if they weren't already working on season 2, we'd be looking at years between this.
That's what happened with that show Arcane over on Netflix.
Yeah, it's sort of a thing of like, you kind of got to get the ball rolling. We're seeing that with this. X-Men 97 is already, pretty much going into its second season. Cape Crusader's already Invincible over on Amazon. It seems like they had that long gap between seasons 1 and 2, but then season 3 right on the heels of it.
Totally.
I think people are learning, like, hey, if these things hit, you've got to be ready to give people more. Because the other thing we're seeing, not so much, but like We've seen a lot of shows hit big, and then enough time passes that people kind of forget about them, and then their follow-up seasons don't do as well.
Yeah. I mean,
So yeah, I'm glad that they know that. But this is another thing I want to bring up specifically on that point, which is I think the animation of this is so cool and different than what we've seen. One of the things I've liked so far about Marvel animation is they will put a different spin on everything. What If looks different than X-Men 97 looks different than this.
yeah, obviously these X-Men 97 was trying to specifically ape a style from 90s cartoons while also modernizing it with modern animation techniques that aren't hindered by a shoestring television budget.
Yeah, I mean you're able to fill in a lot with digital now and speed up the process of that and be able to do more advanced camera, quote unquote, camera work and stuff like that.
This is an interesting sidestep from the animation style we've seen in What If. Obviously, the next project that I'm very curious to see is Eyes of Wakanda in terms of how you also transition into a whole different stylization. But the stylization here is definitely trying to capture the Ditko of it all, right?
Very much so, and that was striking right from the first time we saw these character designs. We're like, wow, they're really going classic Spider-Man. But the thing I really like is the merging of it's very Ditko-y, very harkening back to 60s Spider-Man, but also very modern. Mm-hmm. So the designs are this interesting mix of old school 60s Spider-Man, but very 21st century Spider-Man at the same time.
Yeah, it's not quite trying to go for the timeless quality of something like a Batman animated series, but it's definitely you look sideways at it and go wait, hold on, what year is this supposed to be in? And the answer is 2016, right?
It's exactly, yeah, but it's got a stylized pop art vibe to it, even if you're like, oh, it's vaguely realistic, but it's vaguely in the Ditko vein. It's not going as extreme in its timelessness as Batman the Animated Series, but it is going as extreme of a stylization as something like Batman.
Mm-hmm. And
just in a different direction.
I think that really shines out when we start getting introduced to our costumed villains. We definitely tiptoe into villainy in this show, and I'm really hoping in the second season we go all out, because even a Scorpion, who's about as supervillain as we get in this season.
Yeah, he's kind of our main, because they really put Doc Ock in the shadows. I do like the idea of Doc Ock making the Scorpion, and stuff like that, where it's because the whole take in this is he's this disgruntled scientist who was, had whatever kind of falling out with some sort of business falling out with Norman Osborn,
which is the same Octavius Osborn relationship in the first Spider-Man video game.
I mean, it makes sense, right? If you're talking about two of Spider-Man's main rogues are both genius scientists, the idea of tying those two together, at least having them vaguely familiar with each other, just makes sense from if you're looking at the universe as a whole. Also, shout out to the great Hugh Dancy, who does the voice of Doc Ock in this.
I think they really nail the look for Doc Ock too. They don't even give him the octopus arms really this season.
No, the last shot of him in his prison cell with the drawings around him that make the octopus arms was very cool. But the idea that he's supplier to supervillains in this before he becomes probably a supervillain in season 2.
But just the glasses, the bowl cut, the jumpsuit, I think it's really nail the look of Otto Octavius.
That's one of those, hey man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. Doc Ock already looked great. Just make him comic book Doc Ock.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the interesting things is the emergence of Norman Osborn as a nefarious character, but never goes full Goblin. We do get the glider as a concept.
Mm-hmm.
But we never get him goblining. I think that's going to be his journey over this whole series.
Yeah, and that has sort of also been the case in the video games as well. I keep bringing up the video games because these are the two contemporary Spider-Man stories being told at the moment. Obviously.
I think they share a lot of parallel thinking in terms of how you're going to expand the Spider-Man universe out into other mediums.
Yeah. And whereas that story, the video game story, isn't necessarily trying to tell like an origin story of Spider-Man. It exists in like a pre-existing Spider-Man universe, but each game is telling like an emerging threat story. The first one is Sinister Six. Second one is like Kraven the Hunter / Venom. And none of it has Norman Osborn equals Goblin yet. And the same goes for this show, where obviously we see the pieces of Goblinhood, like Norman experimenting with Spider-Man's DNA, Norman building the glider, Norman having a suit manufacturing closet, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's all there. You know that's where he's going. I like that because, I mean, and no, certainly no ill will towards the Sam Raimi movie, but the idea of really building Norman as the arch nemesis as opposed to the first villain that he would do battle with. This is really building it as like, and especially this idea of him being like a father figure to Peter. Really, I mean, you know, very not just a little bit, but like full on. This is the guy who's not only a father figure to Peter, but a father figure to Spider-Man. Is, you know, partially responsible for Spider-Man, like as a superhero.
This show does something interesting that I can't really recall any other like shows or even movies at this point dealing with this. Is this idea of superhero as brand, right? We've had comics that deal with this a lot.
Yeah. But
the idea that like you're building this persona that you want present to the public.
The only other thing I can think of that does this is the Nolan Batman.
To an extent, but Batman's whole thing is always about like building a mythos, right?
But it's the same idea about like every piece of it comes from here and for this reason, right? In those movies.
But Norman goes into like, no, we're building an image for you, and that comes in like the episode where we have all the different costumes, and we get some references to like Future Foundation stuff and the Beetle costume. And
the arc of the costume over the season is so cool because obviously so much of the marketing for this was really the hockey jersey, sort of low rent with the tubing to make the webs and stuff like that. And we're like, oh, right. It's real proto Spider-Man. And then we see like 3 different costumes before we get to classic Spider-Man by the end of the season. It's really cool.
Yeah. But again,
it's a visual way to show you Peter's journey as a character too.
But tying Norman into that and having him shape the thing that Spider-Man can become before ultimately landing on like, well, Peter needs to be in control of what is a Spider-Man.
What's cool about that is the multiverse thing, right? Is that is a mirror image to the Tony Stark relationship, right?
Yeah. No, and then the MCU Spider-Man is definitely like, what could Spider-Man become? Well, in all 3 of the movies, really, it's about like, there are no shortcuts to Spider-Man. To get to Spider-Man, we need to break this kid down, and he needs to build himself back up. And that's the only way to get there.
One of the things I love about the MCU Spider-Man that I think people were so harsh on early on is just like, oh, he's just Spider-Man, or he's just Iron Man Jr. And I just like the idea that's like, for every step he takes in classic Peter Parker fashion, he gets knocked 2 steps back, right? So he gets Stark tech, then he loses it, then he gets it again, then he loses Stark himself, and then he's got to, redefine himself, and then ultimately he has to erase all, connection to people. And then finally you get the ultimate place they land him is he comes full circle to sewing his own suit, like in the comics and stuff. Mm-hmm. This idea that it's not like you're talking about. There's no shortcuts to Spider-Man. You can't just be handed a cool Stark Tech suit and be Spider-Man.
Right. Well, because that's the difference between these modern iterations of Spider-Man and going back to like Lee Ditko stuff. With the Lee Ditko stuff, you have Spider-Man developing himself in a vacuum. Now, any modern interpretation of Spider-Man is a Spider-Man that either is singular and exists with no other super people, or a Spider-Man like in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man or the MCU that exists as a contemporary of the entire Marvel universe and has to kind of build himself with that context that didn't exist in the original comics. Not really.
Because you can't ignore that, right? You can't ignore that this is not a Spider-Man that's just a new thing on the scene. He is the latest in a world full of superheroes. So to not do something with that would seem weird, even if it's maybe foreign to some comic book readers who are, hearkening back to his original origins.
Right. With his original origins, like the only other super team he was even really bouncing off of with any kind of regularity was Fantastic Four, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're in Spider-Man #1.
And the fact that any modern iteration of Spider-Man has basically never interacted with Fantastic Four, actually, now that I say it out loud, is super weird.
I've seen a lot of people now that the FF movie is coming are like, give me the Peter Johnny friendship finally. I feel like we'll get there, especially because Peter's really in want of friends right now where we left him in the movies. So
Oh boy,
the idea if he could meet his, and especially if Johnny's coming from another universe, they might bond over having no one, kind of.
Huh, that's actually a fun thought experiment there.
Yeah. All of Johnny's friends are gone. None of Peter's friends remember him, and maybe that's what bonds them. I don't know.
I'm into it. That's fun.
Yeah. Disney, that's free. Have it. Or no, wait, sorry. Pay me. No. God, I forgot you're Disney. You have all the money. Just give it to me. Yeah.
I mean, the ultimate question for me is who's sleeping on whose couch?
Oh, it's Pete, right? Because, I mean, he's living in like a hovel by the time he's living in a real rundown piece of shit apartment at the end of No Way Home.
But I don't know, the Fantastic Four, if they're stripped away from their universe where they are the Fantastic Four, we have no idea what they're going to look like.
Reed can come up with something.
Yeah,
right?
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and I think as long as he's connected to Reed Richards, Johnny's going to be fine. It'll be interesting to see. I think a big question we have obviously is how the universes will collapse in on themselves. Will it be a thing kind of like the Hickman Secret Wars, right? Where it's like more of a merging than it is like the Fantastic Four just come into 616, or is it going to be a thing where everything kind of collides and it'll be as if the FF have been pre-established in some, capacity?
I mean, not to like game theory this out too much, but based on what we know about, but based on what we know about the development of certain like MCU projects and the fact that the X-Men are going to be brought into this here sooner rather than later, I got a feeling we're just going to be like, okay, scramble everything together, proceed as if the superhero world was all one consistent world from here on out.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling too, is that it's going to go down the road of the sort of Hickman, like I said, Secret Wars, everything kind of collapses into one thing.
Right. Miles Morales was here the whole time. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about, guys. I always knew that guy. Great guy. Yeah, I have a feeling that's going to happen as well. It'll be interesting to see, because the next Spider-Man movie will come out between Avengers movies.
Between, what is it? Doomsday and Secret Wars?
And Secret Wars, yeah.
Doomsday is only 2 movies away. That's wild.
They start filming in April.
Huh.
Yeah.
Cool.
And they're like, people are in London right now prepping.
There are carpenters building sets as we speak.
Isn't that nuts?
That's wild. Because
what
movies do we have between now and then? We have Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four.
Is that it?
I feel like there's another one.
I don't.
I feel like there's got to be another one. I mean, I don't
think there is.
We've got shows.
Sure. But I don't think there's another movie.
Let me see here. You're correct. So July, So between July of this year, which is Fantastic Four, and May of next year, there's no movies. It's all just shows.
Now we're getting that break and slowdown that everyone was talking about.
Well, because Captain America I think and Thunderbolts were both supposed to come out last year. I believe. But I don't know about Thunderbolts for sure, but Captain America was definitely supposed to be out last summer.
Sure.
So, interesting. And technically, I didn't realize this. Technically, Thunderbolts is considered the end of Phase 5, and Fantastic Four is considered the beginning of Phase 6.
Sure, why not?
That's, yeah.
The phases, to me, were so definitive in the Infinity Saga, right? Because it was like, okay, each phase ends with a Avengers movie. Now that it's a little bit more wonky and all over the place, they can end the phases wherever they damn
Well,
well
because the
claim.
phases now are less important than the sagas, right? We're in the multiverse saga. That's more important than the idea of we're in the first phase of the multiverse saga.
I don't know. The sagas and phases, they were all such a retroactive way of labeling things as we got deeper and deeper into the MCU project. It just feels like they're less important. Like they're just a marketing tool, right?
Well, they're being built for this is the even if not everything is about this, all roads are leading to something about the multiverse. And then Feige's already talked about the next saga will be the mutant saga. So it's like even if not everything connects, the ultimate thrust of where the thing is about this central concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
so
that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's but yes, will it really matter that say this movie we're talking about today, Captain America, does it really matter that it's part of the multiverse saga? Other than a post-credit scene, no. I mean, other than like seeding Cap and the restarting the Avengers. Is there anything else we want to say about Spider-Man? Because now I'm already starting to segue into that.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's really good.
It's really good.
Yeah, I can understand people going like, "Yeah, but it doesn't matter." I don't.
That sort of nihilistic like attitude towards pieces of what could be a larger product is like really irksome to me because it's like nothing matters, man. What do you mean matters?
This is a really good. If you're a Spider-Man fan, you should like this. It's really good. It's a really good version of the Spider-Man story.
By the same logic, like the comic books don't matter because they don't tie into the movies.
Right, yeah. One of and this got a lot of good reviews, but I did see one that really irked me in the same way, where somebody goes like, "What do we even need this for? We already have those Spider-Verse movies." Just like, but that thinking, what? Well, yeah, those are great. This is also really good.
Yeah,
there might be something that you consider "quote unquote" better negates that there should even be another Spider-Man thing.
I think that is a beautiful segue into the movie we're about to talk about.
Well, because John going to get angry on this one, as you might imagine. In fact, I do have a guest, someone I met at the movie Gergoni, that I got right here. Yeah.
Wow, Mr. President.
Thank you. Yeah, he's here. I bought the Red Hulk.
For those joining us over on YouTube, John has a popcorn bust of the Red Hulk.
It's a popcorn bust because see, the thing is, this is actually, I gotta say, I've never bought one of these. This is the first one I bought because I just wanted this on my shelf.
Sure.
Number one, pretty good likeness of Mr. Ford. They even have the chin. They even have the chin star, which I like. But also, as a design, the idea that this is a bust, and then it opens in the back, and that's where they filled it with popcorn.
Oh,
see, but then you just close it. And now it sits on my shelf
into a wound in his shoulder blades.
Friend of the show, Brendan Jones, was very disturbed as I sat next to him eating popcorn out of Harrison Ford's back.
I mean, I prefer that, honestly, over like if his head popped open like a Pez dispenser.
100%. Yeah. The Wolverine one where he had to reach into his mouth.
Yeah, or the famous Dune sandworm anus.
I know. I feel like the idea about just like this is a thing and also it contains popcorn is a better design than like having to reach into stuff for that. Anyway, Captain America, Brave New World. Gergani, we're in a Brave New World.
We're definitely in a brave new world. I wish we weren't sometimes, but yeah.
I mean it's appropriate. But I gotta say, look. It's gonna be hard to review this movie without reviewing the reaction to this movie.
I was afraid of this because like it's so much of the conversation around this movie is fraught with all the things we struggle so hard to fight against, at least in terms of like our own podcasting persona and attitude towards like media literacy and consumption, right?
Because I feel like and I don't want to say, film is subjective, right?
Yeah.
Of course it is. All art is subjective. However, having said that, I feel like there is an agreed upon narrative from a lot of film discussion, in the film discussion world, critics, commentators about this movie that sort of feels like everybody kind of I don't think this really happened, but it does sort of feel like everybody's like, So we all hate this? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So mid-recording, Brendan Jones, welcome to Panel Up, the monthly pop culture panel where we talk about Captain America: Brave New World.
Surprise guess. This is the first one.
I had no idea.
John, we need to secure our comms.
That came. Secure our comms.
Well, I will say
Good
though,
luck. I am the leader. I have gamma radiated brain. I will always be able to figure it out.
I did hear just before he came in. I'm Mr. Blue.
Exactly.
Here's the big problem with Brendan joining us. For those joining us on YouTube, I haven't messed with our overlay at all. So if you're watching our video, you will now see a horrifically blended vision of Brendan's face on the left, my lower jaw on the right, and John's forehead split between two different frames.
There you go.
Because I really only designed this overlay to have two people on at once.
There you go.
I didn't even know you guys did this as a video.
We did.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me.
Hold on.
Okay.
I'm undressed.
Dear God.
Okay.
I
have moved. I've moved it to screen grab. Now they can see all of us, but our precious logo is missing, John.
Oh no, not the logo. Brendan, see, here's the thing. Brendan and I are not, because he's got the shield. I've got Red Hulk, and they're gonna.
I had no idea you guys were talking about the movie, but I always have Cap's shield nearby because you know what? Steve entrusted it to me.
Well, Brendan, as you join us for this, we were just talking about. I don't think it's a conspiracy, Gergani. Because actually, you did come on here right on time. I don't think it's a conspiracy, but there does seem to be. We were talking about the reviews of it, Brendan.
Right.
It seems to be something in the air that's some kind of agreed upon. Like, so this thing sucks. We all think this sucks. Like, this is what we're gonna get.
Possibly, but no, I don't believe conspiracy.
I don't think it's a conspiracy, but it does
zeitgeist, sure. But, I mean, that's something that we've noticed for a while, and John and I have talked about. That it seems to be, especially critics, they are waiting to dance on the grave of superhero films in general and Marvel specifically, not because they're bad necessarily, or it's just they're tired of them, and it's not their jam. They cannot wait to go, there it is, finally the cracks are showing, and we'll not have to deal with this anymore. I won't have to write a review with something man in the title of it, or Captain Person. So I do think that that's something that they're waiting for. They're literally just like salivating so they can claim that regime is done. Yay, bring on more indie dramas.
The way I've discussed it with people is comparing it to something maybe you remember, Brendan, as the wizened elder amongst us, but the Western fatigue of the 60s and 70s.
Brendan, you and I have talked about this, is we are like, obviously there just wasn't as much press and discussion of this kind of stuff because there wasn't the internet, but there had to be critics in the 50s and 60s who were like, another guy in a cowboy
with every long-running genre, someone is waiting for it to die. So, I mean, yes, the Westerns, and I'm sure the spy films in the 60s, I'm sure there were people rolling their eyes going, oh, great, here's Matt Helm. Wonderful,
I was trying to nail down what the genre fatigue was for, like, the 90s and early 2000s, and I think this is very prevalent that the two of you are here for me to say this. It was vampire movies.
Oh, yeah, quite possibly.
There was sort of a thing, you remember this, that it was sort of just like, hey, if you got a pitch, if you could add vampires to it, that would be...
Well, that was when it was hot, and then, of course, it overstayed its welcome. But that's the thing, is that even if superhero movies are getting on people's nerves, that doesn't prevent good ones from being made. Also, it doesn't prevent bad ones from being made, but you can sit there and go, look, all right, sorry that people are ready to move on. There's still money to be made, and still solid entertainment to be had.
Are ready to move on because this movie made a lot of money. Like that's another thing too, where sort of it's an interesting discussion that's happening, and I swear we're going to talk about the movie itself. at some point. But
you guys haven't dived into the movie yet. I
no,
gotcha.
because that's the thing. We were talking about. It's hard to talk about this movie without talking about the reaction to this movie. And the point I'm making, the seemingly split reaction that's happening right now, that's making me ask questions like, why do we have film critics? To a certain extent, it just seems like when there's this massive gap, seemingly.
Wait, John. I think we're reviewing a movie, and you just asked the question, why do we have film critics?
I know, but it's an interesting when I see these, because it's happening a lot. It's not just with the Marvel movies. There seems to be a massive gap, and I guess there always kind of has been, but I've been noticing it more and more growing between what, once again, and we're painting with a broad brush, because of course, I have another thought about the reviews of this movie that I'll get to in a second, but there seems to be this big gap between what critics are positive. People have really brought up this year's Academy Awards as being one of the ultimate examples of, man, they are rewarding movies no one wants to see.
Yeah.
Like,
I still can't believe Wonka was up for so many awards.
Hey, that movie was charming.
It's fine.
It was something with Chalamet. I just can't remember what it was.
One of those. It was either Wonka or the Bob Dylan. I can never remember. Was it Dune? Maybe no. I wish.
I wish.
But I think that's actually an indication of like, what are we? There's this growing gap between, and I guess there always has been. It's the literature versus low art sort of thing, right? About like, this is what's to be respected. But like, nobody saw Honora, even if it's wonderful and wins all the awards.
People vote with their wallet, and I think that disappoints very often film critics who want to reward things they think are more worthy, and that's again gross generalization. There are plenty of film critics that are like, "Look, man, it's all cinema. I like a fun time out, whatever."
That was the point I was going to get to, was about the idea that this movie has like a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, is that bad? That means half of the critics liked it.
Right.
To bring up the idea, and not to make this, like, take it with a grain of salt, it's Rotten Tomatoes. As of right now, it has a 49% on critic reviews with 299 reviews.
And audience score is?
And the audience score is 80% with 5,000 plus reviews.
Yeah.
That's the kind of, well, once again, take both of those numbers with a grain of salt, but they indicate a gap, is what I'm saying.
Right. And that is often the case with populist films.
And like, this is gonna, as of the recording of this, when it comes out, this will have been number 1 2 weeks in a row. It already made back more than its budget opening weekend. So this idea that they're like, because I've seen people go like, so this is rock bottom. This is the end. It's like, well, in your opinion, financially, they're doing just fine.
And I would argue, before you guys get into the movie itself, I would argue that amongst fans, this is a solid effort, and not any. And Marvel hasn't had a rock bottom. Its bottom. I like saying the word. It's
because it's butts.
Its bottom is still entertaining. What they consider its worst films, I enjoyed.
For the longest time, John and I have constantly said, like, the worst MCU film is a B-.
That's right. Yeah. That is absolutely right.
I mean, I for a long time it was Dark World. I think now Quantum Mania is kind of in that vein. Those two are kind of at the bottom.
Depends who you ask, too. Like, I've got people who, like, are rabid at the throat saying, ugh, Love and Thunder, gross.
Yeah, and I love that one.
I have problems with a lot of the stuff, but at the same time, not overwhelming.
No,
my entertainment value.
It's still like
I own every single one of them on Blu-ray, and you go, of course, Brendan, because you're a nerd, and I'm like, yes, but
I've watched Dark World like 6-7 times.
Yeah, if as far as you don't want to have to, pull out the cards and go, right, but I've seen Love and Thunder less times than I've seen The Deer Hunter. It's like that kind of thing where you don't have to bring out your bonfires and go, I only like superhero movies.
I love The Deer Hunter, but that's actually does sound like a sad person.
Well, and there is something about the quantity of Marvel projects, right? Since Endgame, you have the inundation of the TV shows, and just like there is more hours total of things post Endgame than there are pre Endgame, and so that results in people not rewatching things over and over again because there's just more stuff to watch.
Yeah,
This
that's true.
is the 35th feature film released by them. Captain
Wow.
America: Brave New World. This is third, and then add into I don't know. I don't actually know how many shows have been, and I guess a lot of people have felt the shows have been rock bottom for them. We saw the reaction to Secret Invasion. We saw the reaction.
I mean, I will say
Dude.
Secret Invasion is the worst of the shows in my opinion, but that's maybe just.
But I still enjoyed a whole hell
I
of a
really
lot
liked
of it.
it. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I liked a lot of it. It doesn't gel the way I want.
Blood toys of that too, folks. Don't forget.
God damn, he has a
oh.
Funko Pop of Secret
And he
Invasion
had
Nick Fury
it
on his
at the
desk.
ready.
Yeah, he just
had it
grabbed
at
it.
the ready.
There was
Just,
no.
I'm literally surrounded by Marvel toys, so as you can see, but there's more. Brendan,
within hand. There's Big Jim, who hasn't gotten his movie yet.
yeah. Well, that's I gotta say that
Big Jim and Wolfpack.
What's the next move we're gonna be? I mean, I think Hasbro really has been trying.
They
to
really are trying
toy
to
verse, right?
Yeah.
I'm
We're gonna
sorry.
get
The
our-
only thing I have within reach of me is a Lego Mind Flayer from Dungeons and Dragons. So that's all I got.
Absolutely.
I'll take it.
I killed a lot of those in Baldur's Gate 3.
All right.
I'm telling you.
But
Hell
anyway, let's get to the movie itself, because I think from the tone of this, and Brendan, you and I saw it together, and I actually saw it again.
Holding hands because, again, John gets scared.
Well, I was telling Brendan you were a little disturbed to see me eating popcorn out of the back of Harrison Ford for the
Yes.
first time. But,
Yes, indeed.
yeah.
He's one of our finest actors, but who knew that his back contained so much delicious treat?
I gotta say, let's actually start there. Harrison Ford, this is a much meatier role than I was expecting. I didn't know what capacity he was going to be in. This is a really good Harrison Ford, and I know people are like, John's talking about Harrison Ford being good in a movie, but I was actually surprised, not that he was good, but that the depth of character they gave him to play him.
It's because the secret that this movie has actually kept, as opposed to everything else that was spoiled by McDonald's toys a year ago, was that this is a direct sequel to Incredible Hulk and nothing else, basically.
And I bet there was a very giddy Mike Gargoni in the theater about that.
The thing... Okay, just to pull this Band-Aid off right now.
Yeah.
Oh.
I liked this movie, but there's a gaping Hulk-size hole in the plot of this film to me.
Well,
Because we're dealing with the leader. We've got Thunderbolt Ross as the president. We've got Betty Ross as, like, the lingering emotional damage done to him. And we have no Bruce Banner wandering around in any of this? That's wild to me.
Here's the thing, and I have seen a lot of people go on that, but what I like about that is that this still makes sense logically why these characters would be interacting, which is like a good issue of a comic where oftentimes somebody's bad guy, somebody's villain ends up fighting someone else entirely that they didn't fight before, and you're like, oh, that's a cool mix-up. The fact that Captain America versus the leader actually, because that was early teased, I was like, okay, and then I was like, yeah, bring it. Now, would I have loved a Betty turning around after talking to her dad and then Bruce is just waiting in the doorway? Yeah, of course I'd love that. A little cameo would have been nice, but people are sitting there going like, it fails because it doesn't have, or that's something, as you say, a Hulk-size hole. I don't agree. Bruce has
I'm not calling it a plot hole. I'm just saying emotionally for the narrative through line of Thunderbolt Ross. And dealing with the fallout of the damage he's caused to other people in his life, not having Bruce be present for that catharsis at the end of this movie felt really weird to me.
I do agree with you that at some point in one of these future, if it's an Avengers movie, I want to see Bruce go to the raft and talk to Thunderbolt Ross. I would like to see that scene. Just as a fan of those characters.
Because I like lovey-dovey stuff, I would really like to, even if they're not going to get back together, even if it's just like a how have you been kind of thing, I would love to have a Bruce and Betty chat.
Within minutes of this movie ending, you were like, I just want Bruce and Betty to kiss.
Yeah, I just want them to kiss. Even if he's Smart Hulk, which
I told you,
weird.
And I swear we're going to stop reviewing other people's reviews. But on that note, I did see somebody going, the major problem here is that nobody remembers that forgettable Hulk movie. That's why people don't like this. They don't know any of these. They don't care that Liv Tyler. Nobody cares. I'm just like, I don't think that's the case.
I care.
I don't think that's the case. I would also argue that even if they hadn't seen it, they do enough of the
there are
exposition
context clues.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. And you basically do have Ross almost from the get-go going, that is, has she called? Betty, my daughter. Like, okay, we get
it does feel like that. That was
it's
one
old
of the,
man regret. And if people are
Yeah.
confused that didn't see the Hulk movie, if they're confused because suddenly Liv Tyler's on screen, it's like, look,
Number one, you should be delighted. I haven't seen Liv Tyler in a movie in a while, and she's great.
it's been a while.
I will say this movie really hangs its hat on, like, if you've seen a Liam Neeson movie in the last 15 years about an old man who's estranged from a child, like, you get what's going on here.
The movie does it, yeah. And also we know from like because you do get the beginning of this movie kind of knows that when you have the news reports about, because you have him accepting the nomination or accepting the win. He's won as president. I guess he beat Dermot Mulroney, who was president in Secret Invasion.
I would assume so, but
I mean, look, I can't fault Mulroney. Let a fucking Skrull invasion happen on his watch, so I guess that probably qualifies him.
I read
an
an
interesting
interesting
reviews where they're like, "How dare they not mention that or follow up on?"
Oh, for God! I mean, this idea they would spend a half hour mentioning everything if they did. Anyway,
here is the way to make that make sense, like in terms of like electoral cycles, because if you start thinking about like who's been president through the MCU project,
it's weird. I have
thing and versus
the blip broke the electoral cycle. That's the
course
only
it
way
did,
it makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
It would have had to.
Yeah.
Done.
So
He mentioned, and I do like his little speech about there, where it's like, or no, when he's talking about Captain America, just like, we're all cool with you now, Cap, seeing as you're partially responsible for bringing half the world back to life,
Right.
We're all good with the event. We actually, like, the blip being like, we ended the Sokovia Accords because we kind of realized, like, oh, well, shit, who's going to handle things like that if we don't have
Right. It actually did hit home simply, and, I'm up to date with all the Marvel stuff, but it hit home when he basically said, we need the Avengers again. And I just was like, oh, in their time frame, the Avengers weren't the Avengers when they fought Thanos and saved everybody. They were all the world's heroes, essentially.
Right.
But they weren't officially Avengers. And so literally since the Sokovia Accords, there's not been an official Avengers. I was like, okay, yeah, long time.
well, and
That's true. Was Tony not leading some form of them after the Sokovia Accords?
not really. Like, he was showing up and doing stuff, but like his whole team during Civil War was just like people they had around. That wasn't a team that stuck together, because that was like Black Panther went off and did his own thing, and like
And
yeah,
then died.
No, that's an interesting point, and I think it's. I think Thunderbolts is going to address that even more, because I know that a lot of that movie, based on the trailer, seems to be like, hey, in the absence of us having a superhero team, I put these people together.
let's put these wackadoos in a room together and see if they can handle things.
That movie looks like so much
I
fun.
am looking forward to that.
I can't wait. But yeah, that's basically Louis Dreyfus going
With
next
Congressman
best thing,
Bucky.
Congressman James Buchanan Barnes.
My comment to that, again, as far as a reveal, I just was like, oh, what a forgiving public. Because, yeah, I mean, he's done so much good, but at the same time, for decades, he was an assassin who killed hundreds of people.
Two things. I think we know now, news cycles may have been like, well, that may have been overstated. Someone on Fox News is going, But two, I think, yeah, that's the dark. I think, but the other reason is similar to your electoral thing. I think Blip did a lot, to all of a sudden go like, oh, well, shit, man, half of us disappeared for 5 years. Maybe we can look the other way on some Winter Soldier shit.
But here's the thing with this, because I don't think that's. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
He was the first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he's the first one you see go, actually.
Yeah. But I will just say that it's not bad writing. The thing with these movies is that they thread along, and if they're rough patches, unless you are, and we tend to be, and nerds tend to be hyper focused, and we'll pull stuff up and go, what about da da da?
Yeah.
But none of it breaks. So far, none of it has like. People were bringing up, for instance, Celestial Island as being,
I'm glad
what they called it.
I was going to say that.
They kept bringing that up as like, oh, dropped plot thread, and I'm like, no, it's been on TV screens and stuff. Even in Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's on a TV screen.
The best things I saw. I just saw a post the other day that was somebody just going like, regardless of my thoughts on the movie, I'm just glad they did this so I don't have to see another post about when are they going to address the Celestial. You know?
Yeah.
But I do think. I'm glad you brought that up, Brent, because that was going to be the next point I was going to bring. I thought that was a really cool, thing in this movie for it to be the central conflict that all the nations are fighting over.
It's interesting.
Is a weird giant space giant coming out of the ocean.
Who has rights to mine this undead space god?
to your point, Gorgoni, and I'm actually pointing at you, which probably I'm not arranged that way on other people's screens.
Let's see. Based on the overlay, I'm now pointing at Brendan. Now I'm pointing at John. Now I'm pointing at me.
That's okay. Yeah. To me, you'll
like the
always
Brady
be
Bunch
right there.
We're all like,
but I'll say to your point about how this was sort of like an official sequel to The Incredible Hulk. I mean, this movie, while telling its own story, is kind of like a plot tie-upper, or at least we're readdressing things because, again, Isaiah Bradley, great storyline brought up in Falcon Winter Soldier, it doesn't get fully resolved, but still it is carried forward, and the Eternals, Celestial Island is being ramped up, and all this still in the service of Captain America. The mantle has been passed. How is Sam going to do the job? And he does a great job.
I saw an interview with Anthony Mackie where he was, and actually he said this on a few things during the press of this, that one of the reasons the movie is called Brave New World is this movie is about the new status quo of Marvel, and now Sam having to take on a leadership role. So a lot of that makes sense, right? It's like, okay, let's catch everybody up on where we are in Marvel, and now Sam having to grab the reins of it.
Part of my I don't want to say complaints, but something that I've always loved about the continuing nature of the MCU project, and something that I think we really haven't gotten to until after Endgame, and that's why I've liked a lot of the post-Endgame stuff, is we now exist in the wackadoo Marvel Comics universe. We can have Japan and America having a standoff militarily over this dead space god jutting up out of the ocean.
Deadly serious fate of the world kind of stakes, but we're talking about an undead space deity thing.
Not undead, it's very dead.
I'm sorry, dead. Yes, we're
so
literally
crazy dead.
The corpse of a celestial, which introduces us though to, and a big thing. I saw so many people go. This is my other favorite reaction to this movie. Is go like, I don't care what the critics said. I heard Harrison Ford say adamantium, and my life is complete. And I'm just like, I'm kind of the second when he's doing that presentation, he's like, the new element. Adamantium. You're just like, God damn, Harrison Ford.
I mean, to tie this completely in, and obviously the first inkling that this was a thing that could happen was established back in Guardians of the Galaxy when we go to that Celestial's decapitated head in nowhere, and who's mining the crap out of it but the Collector.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that movie with you, Gorgoni. We were like, oh my God. The idea that they're even indicating the head of a Celestial, that something, a giant space being exists.
And within moments, the explanation of the Infinity Stones, and they actually have the flashback, and you actually see Celestials, and I was like, oh, and somewhere Jack Kirby, he didn't roll over in his grave. He actually sat up and was like, all right. That's right.
All right. To stick with Marvel continuity lore, the one above all, who is in fact Jack Kirby, just gave a nod through a cigar and a thumbs up.
Yes. Yeah.
But no, I mean, that was the thing, because that was a big indication of oh, this was the thing Fox was like, we can't, are you kidding me? Galactus, so silly. And so the fact that Marvel's just like, there you go. And then to even go harder at it with Eternals, the most Kirby movie in history. And Brendan and I will never stop defending the hill that is Eternals.
I love it.
That movie
I love
ruled.
it. With the passage of time, I like it even more.
I told you this, John, last week, but I was in the process of basically rewatching everything that I thought was going to like tie into
Oh,
Captain America: Brave New World.
did you watch Falcon and Winter Soldier? The entire
I
series?
rewatched entire
Oh,
Falcon and
good
Winter
stuff.
Soldier. I rewatched Incredible Hulk. I rewatched chunks of Avengers movies. I
To be fair,
rewatched
Incredible Hulk's
Eternals.
on in a loop in your house all the time, though.
Between that and the '90s cartoon show, yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
of the things I rewatched, the two that like really I came away with being like, man, these got an unfair shake when people talk about them in retrospect was Falcon and Winter Soldier and The Eternals. The Eternals is such a like good, I mean, it's a slow meditation on the nature of like power and family, but like it is so radically different than like the tone of other
I'm not
MCU projects.
surprised that it didn't make as much money, but the fact that it wasn't the critical darling really does speak to like because it had a Marvel. Because that movie is number one. It's in the running for the most visually beautiful Marvel movie. It's a stunning looking movie.
Yeah.
I think it's like spiritual, and I just think it's a beautiful film in every sense.
I don't know why it didn't work for people, and if it just boils down to there's no name brand, big characters that people recognize. I can only say, even if you don't know those characters at all, they're all portrayed by talented actors who bring it home.
Really good cast.
And is it too confusing? Not really. They're like immortal superheroes who've always operated in the background and have been worshipped as gods half the time, or demigods.
Similar to what we're talking about here. The movie does a good job of telling you everything you need to know.
I really don't know why it didn't work for people, unless they wanted some slam bang, more lasers out of the eyes kind of stuff.
And there's the ending of the movie has enough of that. The final battle in it is pretty awesome.
And I still think it's one of the best super speed battle. I mean, just the way they did that, I was like, Flash, take note. That's some awesome super speed battling. I thought.
No. We need to have CGI windows into Nicolas Cage fighting a giant spider. That's what we need in a Flash movie.
People want. Actually, if you remember his comments, he was not thrilled about that. That's abomination.
He was like, I didn't know what they were going to use me for, but that's not what I signed up for.
They stole my soul. It's kind of what he said. Yeah, but anyway, I know.
Hey, Warner Brothers, give Nicholas his soul back.
Yeah.
We're going to start a hashtag campaign.
He's just outside the studio gate being like, give it back, you bastards. Let's get, because something we haven't talked about, weirdly, is kind of Captain America, this is the first real outing, of course, of Sam Wilson as Captain America. And, do I love him. I love him. Guy. Number one, Mackie, just talk about a guy with, and watching all the promotional stuff, a man with effortless charm.
Hell's yeah.
Likeable.
What's interesting about this film as a Captain America movie is that it's a dissection of what does it take to be inspirational.
Yes.
It's the first Captain America movie that really sort of breaks down and addresses the idea of Cap as a symbol. Cap is a symbol in the first three Captain America movies, but he's doing so almost by default because that's Steve Rogers, right? This is a movie that is trying to figure out, and the characters within it are trying to figure out, and that's what's such a big part of Falcon and the Winter Soldier was about as a show as well, was what is it that makes the symbology of Captain America something that people fall in line behind? And is it the person behind the shield? Is it the shield itself? And is it some combination of the two? And the answer is ultimately some combination of the two, right?
Well, and I think one of the things I really liked about this movie is that it's a Sam Wilson story. This doesn't feel like we took a Steve Rogers plot and just put Sam Cap. It really is about this idea that Sam is a person, is a human, more than Steve was, more than Bucky is, right? It's the whole idea, the whole thing about, I should have taken the serum, I'm not up to this. And it's like, no, it's because you're so mortal that actually you're the inspiration. It's the scene with Joaquin at the end when he's talking about like, you were the guy I wanted. I couldn't be Steve.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's the weight of legacy, and clearly it's what does that mean for Sam? What kind of pressure is he under? And I like the fact that at this point, because this isn't, I mean, this is his first filmic debut outing, but it's not. He's been Captain America for a while. One thing I did like is the way the movie didn't keep harping on it. There is, of course, the big line that, and he's using it on purpose. Ross going like, "Yeah, you're no Steve Rogers," and it's like that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
But the news reports, everything, they don't go Sam Wilson, Captain America. They just go Captain America showed up and did this thing, and it's like so the public has already adjusted, and no one's sitting there going, "I don't want no
one of my favorite
dark-skinned man being the Captain America."
That's not the thing here.
I know. I like that it wasn't.
Right, I know. It's his own self-doubt that really is the case.
Yes.
It's everyone is in agreement. This guy's Captain America. But the one of the things I loved in this movie, and there's a similar moment I remember in Age of Ultron, because it's so comic booky, is the moment, the opening, sort of James Bond type cold open where they
you got to job some B-list supervillain in the opening sequence.
Yeah. But like when Sidewinder is there being creepy with all the people in the church, and just over the wire they go, Captain America's here. And he's like, everybody move. It's the same thing in Age of Ultron where they're just like, sir, the Avengers are. Just the idea that's like villains know them, they carry a rep. That's what I want. That's superhero. Yeah. But just the idea that he's like, oh shit, Captain America.
By the way, speaking of the toy release, which was it was a runaway train they couldn't stop.
Yep.
For McDonald's.
Yeah.
They really indicated. I mean, Diamondback was one of the toys they offered. Diamondback gets nothing in this movie.
Yeah.
And she ends up in the comics being very important. She even hooks up with Steve for a long time. I didn't expect her to hook up with Sam, but at the same time, I was sitting there going like, okay. And of course, you've got Giancarlo Esposito. You're not going to, like
a fucking time of his life in this thing, man.
Yes, you're not going to cut any of his screen time. You're going to let.
I've always wanted to kill Captain America.
And now the idea that the Serpent Society is essentially like a paramilitary thing, like an offshoot.
That's the other thing I like, that this movie is just like, oh, they've hired the Serpent Society. They're like, oh, the idea that this is their first appearance in a movie, but like they've been a thorn in my side for the last year has been this. I love it. Am
I kind of missing their snake outfits and their teleportation cape? Come on, a little bit.
I mean, this, to be fair,
made my voice go up.
I'm not saying that they won't ever. They might still do that, but I mean, Giancarlo Esposito, who has been, as we know, at every convention going, get me in Marvel. I want to be in Marvel. And so he's finally here, but he's like, oh, this is just a taste. Oh, I'm going to be a big bad going forward.
Oh, man. So we're going to get a hold of the Serpent Crown. Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, I have a feeling he's going to, but even the last moment, I love that last scene. He talks about it. If you break out of that prison, I'm coming for you. He goes, when I break out, Captain.
Yeah, that is so great.
Until next time.
That is super villain stuff, and it's good.
He's in like tasty. 3 scenes, and he just dominates in all 3 of them. He's so happy to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciated that this movie didn't kill any of its villains.
It did not.
I know.
Did not.
I love that. I love that. It's one of the most wasteful thing that all the Warner Brothers movies did.
Even all the early Marvel movies.
They weren't building it. I don't think they would have done that if they really thought they were building out a universe.
That's true. But all the early Marvel movies kill their villains. All of them.
Yeah. However, I will say Green Goblin always has to die, because that's an essential part of Green Goblin.
What's great is they actually found a way to still bring it back.
And they still brought it back. Yeah. Multiverse!
That's the thing with comic books. To be fair, even if you do kill a villain, you can still find a way to bring it back.
Sure.
Yeah. They do seem, they still kill some, but they're choosy. You can kill a Crossbones. Sorry, Frank Grillo. You can, but
Yeah. But again, it being what it is, there's no telling that he won't come back. I mean, this is because it's comics. God bless.
This is true. Yeah, I mean that's it exactly. And some, like a character like the leader, you're not going to kill him. And I didn't think they would have killed Thunderbolt Ross. Let's talk about the Red Hulk of it all, because I have seen, of course, the reaction of like they spoiled the whole movie revealing him in the posters. It's one of those catch-22s though, right? Because it's like, what are you gonna do? Not promote the Red Hulk though, and make toys and
Something
I like how playful they were with it, with Harrison going, "What's a Red Hulk?"
there's a Red Hulk.
I think the miscalculation here wasn't necessarily spoiling that there was a Red Hulk in the movie. I think the miscalculation was more having the Red Hulk be who we thought it was the whole time. Because part of my love of the Red Hulk story initially, and look, I think that whole story has some issues as well. Jeff Loeb wrote a Hulk story without Bruce Banner really being a character in it, and that's interesting, but the whole mystery in that story is who is the Red Hulk, right? And there are Marvel writers who will talk about the mustache of it all for years, but
yeah,
where does the mustache go?
Right, exactly. So when this movie is like, well, I shaved the mustache, then you're like, okay, fine, we don't have to deal with it at all. But that's just them not directly adapting the Red Hulk story. There's no doubt that one of the things I like about this is the tragedy of the whole movie. It's coming. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
By setting it up as the central like conflict in the trailers and whatnot, though, it doesn't lend us towards any kind of like anticipation of it, I think.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I was wondering when it was gonna. Then of course, you've got the people going, "He's only in it for 6 minutes."
Well, I don't necessarily care about the runtime. If we're gonna have a Hulk fight, like it needs to be big and loud and do it all at once.
It was.
I said to you, come out of the theater, Brent. I was like, "Well, if that's just 6 minutes, it's a damn good 6." That Captain America Red Hulk fight was worth the price of admission.
It was great.
He does blow up the White House. Like Roland Emmerich is going like, that's how I would do it.
I mean,
exactly
the thing I stood by is he impaled a helicopter with the American flag.
And in a true Captain America fashion and a true Sam Wilson fashion, as we were talking about, it ends simply because he's able to reach the emotional core of a raging gamma monster.
Yeah.
And that's great. Because he is not super powered. Those wings are awesome, and Wakandan kinetic fields are awesome.
Cool addition, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's up against the strongest thing on Earth.
My favorite moment in the fight was when the first punch hits the wings and they're just vibrating because they've absorbed so much energy. And Sam looks at him like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah,
I love the moment after he gets the because he stabs the wing into him. I also like the idea that because they're vibranium, they can at least pierce his skin, unlike bullets. They don't kill him, but they can at least cut him. But when he stabs,
he also shoots out the feather daggers.
Yeah,
he gets a few of those in the gut.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sorry, what?
They're flechettes.
Oh, I thought you said something else that was naughty. Okay, flechettes. Okay.
Red Wing shooting the lasers at him to once again just anything to slow him down. I do think this is about the 10th movie where I'm like, stop shooting at Hulks, you fucking everyone's first response to these movies just. I mean that's
all they have.
And they're like,
let's not forget that in Superman versus Spider-Man 2, that Superman talks.
Let's never forget.
Down. He also talks Hulk down.
He does.
Though he does take away the little robot thing that's irritating Hulk and goes, let's calm down. Let's calm down.
My favorite part of that is that Superman says, "Hey, big fella."
Yeah. He goes,
Superman calling Hulk big fella really got
big fella. And then he goes, it's getting kind of dark.
Yeah.
Sun's getting real low.
Yes, getting real low.
No, I love the moment after he stabbed him and he thinks he takes him out and he gets back up and he's just like, I should have taken the goddamn it's also the moment of when he gets kicked in the beginning of the movie when he's fighting that guy and he's like, ugh. Like they do these sort of John McClane-esque moments of Sam being like, that really hurt. Like that wouldn't have hurt Steve, but it hurt me like crazy. Oh.
He's still extremely durable for a mortal man.
We're working on action movie rules. Like
and
you can get shot a couple of times and be okay.
They make a couple of lines. There's the vibranium wings, but also when he fights Sidewinder when he attacks him in the street, and he stabs him. He's like, "What is that Kevlar weave?" You know, they
Yeah,
do put
yeah,
in
yeah.
a couple lines
Yeah.
about like how he can take an axe to the gut and survive. Is like, oh
Yeah.
well, he had a little protection on, you know.
He's armored up.
Yeah,
He's
they.
armored
I
up.
mean, it's real John Wick rules where, like, as soon as the John Wick franchise establishes there's armor in his suit, they're like, it's fine. He can get shot 100 times now. Like, yeah, okay, sure.
I thought this movie worked on the action level. I think it
Really
worked
good action.
and my happiness when it comes to Marvel is how they see, even if the world at large and the critics think of it as a factory just churning stuff out,
Yeah.
they are still smart enough to go, people have to like the characters, have to like their interactions. And I found, you mentioned, Anthony Mackie's got charm for days and days, but all the emotional beats between Ross and Sam, where they're antagonistic, but it still has an actual thought process behind it. I like that Ross is never a comic book villain where he is unwaveringly wrong and evil. Instead, this is a flawed man who he was turned into that thing. He did not do it to himself.
But a lot of the reason he ends up in the situation is he is trying to fix mistakes he made. He made the mistake of at his weakest point when he was dying. I mean, I thought this was also a really cool way to how he gets to the Red Hulk is this idea about, I was dying, I turned to this guy who is the smartest man in the world, because of his gamma irradiated brain, which is of course very comic booky, but
the best thing ever.
But it's just like, but he fucked me over, and I don't even know how much he fucked me over.
But even the leader isn't, like, he is full comic book villain in this movie. Don't get me wrong. I really liked Tim Blake Nelson as the leader. Him home invading those two people with just a single green eye. Oh, so good.
I mean, he is chilling, because he never talk about, while he is full on comic book villain, he always plays him just kind of the hello captain,
which is.
But
what I always imagined the leader would
He only gets the one moment after they defeat his plan in the ocean that he gets like a, which is great. You want that from your supervillain.
But for all of that, his motivations track so hard onto, like, the mistakes that Ross has made, and, like, you can come away from this movie basically being like, well, okay, but Ross really did, like, destroy this guy's life and throw him in a hole and use him for years and years and years.
Watching it the second time, I really had this thought of at the end, not quite to the extent, but he kind of wins, right? Like, he does bring down Ross, which really is his main goal.
Yeah,
is show the world the monster. Now he gets taken away. That gets taken away from him because Ross is an honorable enough man to turn himself over.
Who's president now?
Well, that's a big question people have.
Oh my God!
Here's the thing, though. Who the president is in Marvel only matters in as much as what right.
I also really respect that it ends. I mean, the way it ends with Ross.
Look,
he's not going to duck. He goes, I'm at fault, and
I like
gets
that Sam
locked
Wilson
up in the raft.
Sam Wilson's like, that went a long way for me. You take it, I don't like nice. There's and I love the whole thing about, why would you come and visit me, Sam? He's like, I want to make sure an old soldier's okay. You're like, military bonds. I love, like, all the characters, if you know the comics, are so on point with these guys.
Well, also, Sam isn't military in the comics.
We know who the president is. There's 7 seasons of a TV show called Veep that lets us know who's been in the back this whole time.
That would be Contessa. Thunderbolt starts and she's sworn in as president.
I love Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I've loved her since she showed up on Saturday Night Live. I never knew her before. She's great. But I sit there going like, guys, part of me does kind of miss the 60s spy version of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Contessa being like this sexy Italian lady.
Hey, Brendan, liking how things were in old comics? This is so unlike you.
Yeah,
Hit you in the
unfortunately,
face.
I think we're not going to see much in the way of the Sterankoizing of any of the like spy stuff. Unfortunately,
There was a
You know
flying car in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 1, which
I
was
will
just
say-
for us nerds. I was like, oh, the flying car!
You know what? Actually, we were just talking about the beginning of those. We were talking about Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. You know what I would love to see? And Marvel, I'm
You'd
available.
love to see him doing whatever a spider can?
Well, that I mean, they're giving me that. But I'm saying, what about we talk about how that's a very Ditko Spider-Man inspired thing? Do a Steranko-y spy show that just embraces that. It doesn't have to be in canon. It's its own thing. Give me 60s super spy Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
What if that's
be
the
amazing.
version of S.H.I.E.L.D. that's on the Fantastic Four's Earth?
Oh, you know what? That would make a ton of sense. Like the James Bondy, that's their shield is the super spies and the blue
What if
suits.
their Nick Fury chomps cigars?
let me
Nick
see their
Fury's
helicarrier that looks like a flying bathtub.
Yeah.
and fights Godzilla.
Well,
And
once
fights
again,
Godzilla. Very importantly,
even if they don't do it in that movie, that could be where the cartoon show is set or something like that. I would love to see that Ranko style.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be amazing.
Yeah, Marvel, call me. I'm here. I got ideas. I feel like
Man.
every episode ends with me going, Marvel, call me. I have thoughts.
Most of my podcast with Chad ends with me asking James Gunn to give me a call. Anyway,
real quick, if I got to mention, we haven't talked about him much. We just mentioned him briefly. I thought Danny Ramirez was also incredibly charming as Joaquin Torres.
it's great.
Making him the young, eager guy who wants to the whole thing at the beginning where he's like, hey, man, you can't be in two places at once. Maybe I could suit up, put the wings on,
The characterization's great. He plays it great. And
Very
again, the
dynamic,
chemistry's great.
Because, I mean, obviously he was in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but he takes much more of a central position here. And this whole idea about, like, I love when the whole thing about, like, you don't have to go with him. He's like, I know, but it's going to be way more noble if I do. Like, he's just the guy who's like, but then, of course, that also has the arc of he almost dies then. He's so eager that it almost gets him killed.
It has that echo of Captain America fearing about losing his partner.
I want to see
that's
him
essential.
team up with Kate Bishop.
I mean, look, I feel like you want to see anyone team up with anybody as possible in a world where Secret Wars is coming.
I know.
Well, we're gonna get our young Avengers. We're gonna get our new Avengers.
We're
gonna
definitely
get
gonna get
Avengers.
young Avengers.
We're even gonna get Dark Avengers. Apparently.
I'm not. It's not a huge disappointment. I was slightly surprised we saw no Patriot in this though, because we had.
Here's what drove me crazy. I understand the filmmakers addressed it, and they're like, we thought about he was going to be in it, then we just it.
I'm sure there were, like all of these, I'm sure there were any number of possible appearances.
But the only thing I was sitting there going, yeah, I get it. You can't devote screen time to the character, but when they're putting Isaiah back in prison, one line of "Look after my nephew" or my grandnephew or whatever he is.
Yeah.
His grandson is that would have been it. It would just been acknowledging that he exists, not that he has actual story arc.
Man,
So-
Carl Lumley in this movie, fucking man, knocks it out of the park.
Lumley's one of those guys who's always been great, and I feel like just doesn't get talked about enough. But literally every single thing I see him in, I'm like, going all the way back to Mantis. God, I loved Mantis.
Look,
I was going to say, why don't you go back to Buckaroo Banzai? But yeah, okay, Mantis.
Of course, Buckaroo Banzai, obviously.
Buckaroo Banzai. Oh my God. Oh,
I mean, he's
so
the voice, and of course, he was the voice of Martian Manhunter on Justice League. I loved him on Alias. He's just one of those
I would
characters.
just say, if you need a win,
yeah,
call yourself some Lumley. Get yourself some Lumley because you
And-
get a win.
I was thrilled because I was, we knew he was, but I wasn't. I was thrilled that he is like he's got a real deal character in this. He's in this movie
Yes,
a
he
fair amount. Oh, the other person we haven't talked about is Shira Haas, playing not Sabra, never called Sabra. What's her name?
No, they do call her Sabra once.
Do they call her Sabra?
I think it's like a code name. I think
They maybe
when they were
do.
doing her like dossier.
I gotta say, I'm so glad that people protested because the pro-Israel stuff. No, it just there's the one-off line about she was born in Israel. Yeah,
Yeah, she's okay. So Shira Haas plays Ruth Bat-Saraf, which is in the comics is a character named Sabra to explain this and some of the controversy behind it. In the comics, Sabra was introduced as a mutant superhero from Israel, and like her first appearance is talking
Contest of
about
Champions.
Contest of Champions. There's also that issue of the Hulk she shows up in, where
Yeah.
the Hulk gets mad at how Israel treats Palestinians. And like, kind of the whole point of the character is like, what if nationalism is taken too far as a superhero a lot of the time? Very rarely does she show up not as a critique of like Israeli relations with the rest of the world.
Here's the case where she's definitely not. She's just, I mean, this feels like a thing where it's like, hey, we want a character. If she's Israeli, great. Let's give her this name.
My question is,
Yeah.
if that is your intent, then why use her?
Yeah.
I do lean towards source material. Not that she's a great character, but she has been. I think that the smart thing in Contest of Champions when they did that series was they wanted to, similar to what DC did with Global Guardians, they just wanted to expand their world and say other nations have their like signature hero as well, and we've been ignoring them. So in the case of Contest of Champions, you also had the it's very on the nose, and I can't remember what his superhero name is, but communist China has a superhero that can become multiple people, like Jamie Madrox, and so he can just replicate himself. And it's like, oh, it's a little on the nose. We are all the same man. Okay, yeah, communism, yay.
I will say, due to the fact that we know this movie got delayed by strikes and was supposed to come out last summer, unfortunate timing that the movie coming out now, definitely we have a different view of an Israeli character than we might have had.
And I don't know if she was more identified as
I don't know either. We know stuff changed. We know they did some reshoots, although they have stated nowhere near the amount of reshoots people have said.
Yeah.
The idea of the American government welcoming in a former, in the movie, she is a former widow,
ex-widow,
ex-widow from
the idea of not,
Red
but
Room.
the key point is not just the American government. Ross specifically, right? That's his thing. Where it's like, she's my number 2.
Yeah, and that's fine. My point being is that Marvel does a good job of saying, well, this is the cinematic version, and it's usually pretty close, just like we were talking about with Sidewinder. I mean, clearly he's not wearing a snake mask, but he's
got a cool vest full of knives, though.
But even as you mentioned, Crossbones eventually ended up looking kind of like he does in the comics by the end. But so in this case, I do kind of go, if you've gone that far away from original character, just make her a new character, because that's not a mutant superheroine at all. She's good in it. I find her casting odd only because I think it is the bait and switch of this is the tiniest person.
Well, I mean,
she is so little.
Isn't that kind of always the thing with the widows? Florence Pugh's pretty small.
They're unassuming,
yeah, that they're all sort of these girlish.
I don't know, that final army of them in the Black Widow movie, they were all kind of hot. But there you go.
What did you say anything about not hot? I said they were small. They were petite.
I don't remember them all being very small. They all looked kind of supermodel-y. But
well,
regardless,
the two main ones
Brendan,
we've seen,
all of their stunt doubles were rather robust. Yes.
I gotta say though, she does end up in the modern Sabra outfit by the end of this movie with the blue and white.
Well, they color code, so it's at least if you, just like they did with Batroc, they never gave him a mask, and they didn't even do like the color coding for the full outfit, but his zippered top had the purple and had that orange stripe down the middle, and I'm like, okay, I would have liked him to have a little mustache. Come on, man. Was that so much to ask? But they kept his nationality, and they kept he's a master of savate. And
the kicking, that's what he's good at.
The kicking boxing. So it was all very good. I liked her in this movie. I'm not anti the character. I don't think that protesting did anything, because she's not a Israeli, Betty Sue in this movie.
No, they like I said, if you watch them, there really is just the one line where they go, she was born in Israel, she's former widow, boom. You know what's interesting though? I think as I'm looking at the discussion of the criticism of the character, criticized from both sides, because also the American Jewish Committee felt she wasn't Jewish enough.
Wow.
There's just no winning.
Like, okay.
And to Brendan's point, why even like invoke all of that ire when it's a character that isn't trying to replicate Sabra from the comics?
No, and I think it's a thing though where, and not that it would have invoked some ire, but unfortunately, I think it invokes more ire now coming out than when it was made. Certainly.
Well, and that is where a lot of the like whatever original plans for this character maybe got derailed when Israel invaded Palestine.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the version. I mean, I do know that the biggest thing that I think is because, like we talked about before, some of the reviews that I don't agree with, they're talking about, boy, you can really see all the reshoots all over this thing, and I don't really see those because I think one of the interesting things is the entire character of Sidewinder exists in reshoots, and I think that's really well included.
Yeah.
I mean, I can sort of see the seams here and there where, like, okay, you can excise the Sidewinder stuff from the movie, and it really
information
doesn't
came out a different way, though.
Yeah,
right? Because that information would still have to be there. So that may have been a thing where they're like, can we action up some of this exposition?
Not even really, because all the Sidewinder stuff just increases the depth of, like, who is the quote-unquote buyer, right? And it ends up being the leader, but Sam figuring out who the leader is isn't necessarily contingent on Sidewinder existing, because that's happening regardless with the whole Ross storyline. Because Ross is being blackmailed and like manipulated by someone. How Sam figures that out can kind of be swapped in and out.
Yeah, but it certainly adds to the action of the movie. Like, I'm trying to imagine, like, what is the movie with, like, two of its big action set pieces?
Sure, but I'm just saying.
I'm just wondering what the beginning of the movie was.
Being able to see the seams of that and where the pieces can be swapped in and out isn't a failing of the movie, but it is something
there had to be something along those lines, just energy-wise. I didn't necessarily. I don't know. I know the guy who played Copperhead, I think, got a little pissy about some of his stuff got cut down to include more Sidewinder.
And of course, again, they get name checked, but Diamondback, I don't think she has a line of dialogue.
I didn't even realize she was in the movie, not gonna lie.
Yeah, she's in there.
There you go. Well, you could have gotten the Happy Meal toy.
Yeah, but we know the Serpent Society will continue to be a threat, so I wouldn't be surprised if these characters come back.
Aren't there some rumblings about the Serpent Society like show or something happening?
Well, a lot of those, to be fair, have come from Giancarlo.
Yeah,
you know, where he's going like, next thing, my own Disney Plus show.
The thing I like is, his enthusiasm is great, but he hustles. He hustles. That's the thing. He's like going, "Oh, you like it, right? You want more of me? Great." Let them know.
He goes to these conventions and gets people whipped up, man.
That was like when Denzel kind of inadvertently announced Black Panther 3.
I do love that, where he's like, yeah, actually, I just got a call. I shouldn't have said that.
Wow.
Wasn't supposed to say I was in that, but okay.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Anyway, it's like, what was the other day? The other week where Benedict Cumberbatch was like, yeah, you know, I'm not going to be in Doomsday. It's a sad thing. And then, like, a couple days later, he's like, just got an email from Marvel. I am in it, and I've been told to shut up. I don't know what I'm talking about, so don't listen to me about anything.
Dude, I mean, there's so much to work in with Doom, and I doubt we'll ever get to it. But the confluence, the crossover of Doom and Doctor Strange is great, but I doubt we'll ever get to it.
It doesn't have to be the big thing, but I just want a little confrontation, right? You just want
of course.
No,
I can help you get
I want
your
the whole
soul
movie.
Out of
yes,
hell.
go. They need to go to hell together and rescue Doom's mom.
That's
that
the kind
great
of thing.
Mike Mignola graphic novel.
I mean, no, it's one of my favorites ever. But there you go. But I think in general, this is a solid entry. I mean, for me, here's the thing too. I think when you talk about the subjective nature of this, also, like, this is the flavor of the MCU I like. So I'm going to be more drawn to an espionage, because I like that this is kind of Manchurian Candidate in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I was surprised no one actually mentioned or name checked, because they do talk about it. I'm like, oh, well, the song triggers them and they've been brainwashed. I was like, just say Manchurian Candidate. Everyone knows what that means.
I would argue that media literacy being what it is these days, almost no one would know what that means.
Hey, they made another one of those, though.
With Denzel.
With
Denzel, which is very good. I like both.
Actually, it's a not bad remake. The original, you can't really touch it.
There are things I like in both. There are things I like in the new one, and there are things I like in the old one. But
in terms of like That movie is what,
I'll take
30
Denzel
plus
over
years
Frank.
old? That
Plus
Denzel.
60, yeah.
The remake, yeah.
Oh, the remake is
Yeah.
at least 20 years
Yeah,
old.
it's from the 90s, I think.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there.
But in terms of
Got it,
like
yeah.
Manchurian Candidate being a shorthand for political thriller where somebody in power is being manipulated.
Well, for
and-
mind control specifically.
And mind control specifically. Like
I said to John, just because, again, it's you talk mind control in Captain America, I was like, come on,
Yeah.
where's Dr. Faustus?
I
Come on,
just
that's
don't know if that's the shorthand you
that's-
think it is for like modern movie going audiences.
Well, it should be, Kurgoni.
That's
That's
fair.
right.
But it's like
hate when
I
we
know
have
I
these
know
fights.
what you're saying when you say Maltese Falcon. I just don't think everyone else knows what you're talking about when they say Maltese
Tough
Falcon.
dreams are made of, Kurgoni. But yeah, boy. God, by the way, could you imagine if John Frankenheimer had made a Captain America movie? Oh, that would have been something.
It would have been a very good film.
Anyway, as we were talking about beforehand, we will be back with some. We're gonna have a lot of Marvel content this year. We're getting all of last year's Marvel stuff and this year's. So you know,
Rest assured, at least some of the people on this show are not experiencing any superhero fatigue because it's basically what we have instead of religion.
Yep. As we always say, just Brendan, as you like to say, just put it right here. Put it in the vein,
Yeah,
man.
right on in.
Just give me
Right on
a
in.
cocktail of Marvel and DC right there, baby.
On the day when the genre finally dries up for good, and while other people are
It'll
toasting
never-
with champagne, I
Yeah.
will be very sad.
Well, I
will be
feel
sad.
like a lot of things, it will recede, but it will probably it's here to stay forever. In the way that we still make cowboy movies, we still make vampire movies, we
Yeah.
still, it will never go away. Someone will still be crafting a superhero movie. But of course, well, I hope you enjoyed this surprise, our first ever surprise guest.
Honestly, I thought we were doing a different podcast at the exact same
But I
time.
will say, if Brendan's going to pop in at a surprise, a Captain America movie is a pretty good thing for you to just pop into.
Yeah.
Because you are in the. Are you still reading through all of Captain America?
Yeah, I'm in 1990.
There you go.
Oh, we're in the we're past the Nomad era then, yeah?
Yeah, no, we've gone through the Captain era where he gets his title taken away and John Walker shows up and
Is
becomes
that still
Captain.
Grunwald in 1990?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
he has a really
he did
long
for a
run.
long time, yeah. Because then
Yeah.
eventually it's Wade. And actually, I don't know if you guys saw this. This is breaking news as of this. Chip Zdarsky is taking over Captain
Yeah.
America.
We'll see how it goes.
He's taken over from J. Michael Straczynski, who's been doing it for the last year or two.
I think if his Batman run is any indication, Chip can handle a good serious book now and then.
Daredevil as well. His Daredevil
Yeah,
run is
totally.
fantastic. Yeah, so very excited for that. But of course, if you want to get more from us on the Punch Up Entertainment Network, you can head over to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/punchupent. That's Punch Up ENT. Get cool exclusive bonus content from all the shows on the Punch Up Entertainment Network. Granny, where else can people check us out?
YouTube. This particular video might be a little messed up. I think I fixed it halfway through, so it should be fine now.
I'm glad to have done that to you.
But it is one of the best ways to support us, besides just directly handing us money, is to go over to YouTube. That's youtube.com/@punchupentertainment. There,
You see us like at conventions or something, just give us some cash.
I love
mean-
the idea of like, oh well, what? And someone's like slipping a 20 into your pocket.
Like, hey,
honestly-
great Captain America discussion. Just
if you like what we do, give us a like, a comment, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. You're gonna hear "May the Panel Be With You," where we read Star Wars comics. You're gonna hear Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, where these two chuckleheads watch a bunch of monster movies. You're gonna hear the IP Squad. I think the current season of the IP Squad is the Universal Soldier franchise, which God help us all. Among our YouTube exclusive shows, like Punch Up Plays, where Elliot Lewis and I are playing through the Mass Effect franchise and having a grand old time. Elliot deciding whether or not to exterminate certain species is always fun.
Did you save the Ranny Queen?
The Rachni Queen, yes, we did
The
in
Rachni
fact
Queen,
save the Rachni Queen.
Yeah, that's
we'll
a smart choice. She'll help you out at the end.
We'll see how it goes. Anyway,
spoilers.
yeah, youtube.com/@punchupentertainment. Please come check us out there.
And we'll be back next month. I'm not quite sure what we'll be talking about. Maybe Daredevil. I don't know if it'll be done by the time the next episode will be out.
We'll see what
But
happens.
We'll figure it out. We've stopped promising these things. We keep having to change
Because
them,
we keep having to change them, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for watching. But until I'm John Campbell.
And as always, I will be Mike Ergoni.
Till next month, we're going to panel down.